Welcome, everyone. For those who are joining us for the first time, I'm Leslie Wolf-Kreutzfeldt, co-founder and executive director of the China-U.S. Women's Foundation. With me tonight is CUSWF co-founder Mingyi Yu and esteemed board members and advisors. The Foundation's SAGE initiative organizes and supports programs supporting social health, arts, gender equality, and education. I hope we can meet in person, but in the meantime, in the spirit of Gen-Zers, let's think of this forum as a virtual pizza party. Let's discuss essential issues, have some fun, and make new friends. In the meantime, I'm going to let some new people in. This summer, we hosted interns from China and the US. I want to thank each of you who participated in the program. You have helped to organize this forum, supported our donor and partnership outreach, enhanced our social media, and created art projects that will be showcased today. Dana Keep from Wellesley College and Robbie Gross from Civil Friends School provided a pedagogical framework helping us to explore new paradigms in education, which we'll showcase tonight. Why are we focusing on Gen Z? When the pandemic hit early last year, we realized that this was the demographic most impacted. Gen Zers are people roughly born from 1997 onward. These are students who were forced to go virtual with their studies and thereby missed out on vital social interaction. In the first two forums, we explored issues like virtual education, mental health, and anti-Asian violence. This summer, we wanted to gain a better understanding of the impact of the pandemic. We read works by historians like Adam Tooze and Niall Ferguson and considered topics including how do different political systems react to COVID-19, what has been the economic and mental health impact, especially on women who suffer disproportionately, and what are our strategies for recovery and renewal. This forum attempts to lay out some of our insights and showcase latest thinking. Just like in the previous forums, we hope to capture history in order to better prepare to take on the future. Marianne Bernstein, noted photography and curator, led our arts program this summer because tapping into creativity is vital for resilience during difficult times. Thanks, Marianne, for your leadership, friendship, and creativity, and I look forward to seeing the results this evening. We will be expanding this program with you in the fall, inviting more students to take part, both in the US and China. In upcoming months, CUSWF will explore more closely how companies can accommodate Gen Zers and make the work transition easier, especially with new realities of virtual work and climate change. Tonight, we are fortunate to have two thought leaders who are leaders in business who will discuss new career paradigms. Desmond Wheatley from Beam Global and Ning Liu from JP Morgan, Hong Kong. My co-host today is Marissa Mahoney, a 2020 Wellesley College graduate and currently the research coordinator at the psychology department at Wellesley College. Marissa was a CUSWF intern last summer, joined our youth leadership team, and served as an advisor to interns this summer. Marissa, thanks for everything and your wonderful contributions. Now I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Leslie. I am so excited to have been working with the foundation for the past year already. I had, of course, joined it in 2020 when we kind of had no idea what 2020 was going to look like, and I couldn't even imagine 2021. But I was so excited when I first found out about the foundation because I was really interested in just the mission of bringing women together from China and the US, and that was something that I was really starting to think about more as a Chinese American, and I wanted to learn more about how I could support women across the two countries. And this is an amazing opportunity, and I've loved the year with you all, and I've especially loved getting to know all these amazing interns for this summer who put together a great program for tonight. And so I'm going to give a brief overview, which will, so of course, we're going to have our education discussion followed by a career discussion. The education discussion will highlight two of our guests, Dana Keep and Robbie Gross. And then our career discussion will have Desmond Wheatley and Ying Liu. And we'll follow that portion with a breakout room where you get to speak with the two speakers for the two groups a little bit more. And then we'll follow that with a arts workshop discussion, which again was led by Marianne. And you'll get to hear a bit more about that project from Marianne, as well as we'll be highlighting the artwork done by some of the amazing artists of the summer. And so that'll be another opportunity after, meaning a breakout room again, where you can interact with the artists and hear more about them, and then just have another opportunity to discuss with everybody. So I think that is everything that I needed to cover. And with that, I am going to try to share my screen with you all, and I will also be passing it on to Heidi, who will be our first person to introduce what is next. Heidi, feel free to go for it while I try to get my screen share going.
Yeah, great. So the first session is for the education, and I think Audrey will help us to introduce Dana Keep while Marisa is trying to sharing her screen.
Yeah, so I'll jump right into it. First, I'll introduce a little bit about myself. I'm Audrey. I'm one of the interns for this summer, and I'm a rising sophomore at Wellesley College. I just really wanted to thank CUSWF, Leslie and Mingy, and all of the other mentors for giving us all a great summer, guiding us through these 6 weeks and helping us to prepare this really great program for all of you tonight. So I'll first introduce Dana. So we'll be covering new paradigms for education in this part of the forum, and we'll really just be discussing new ways to approach education and how to make the most of your education. Dana has worked with Wellesley College students and alumni on career launch, advancement, transition since joining the Career Ed office in 2012. Before that, she worked at Harvard University in the Office of Career Services for a few years, and she's also worked as a consultant for the Career Services Office at Harvard Business School for the past 23 years. In addition to having experience in the private sector as well as the federal government. Dana graduated from Middlebury College and holds a Master of Education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She really enjoys helping others build confidence, think creatively, and present themselves well, taking practical steps toward their goals at any stage of life. And so now I'll pass it over to Sarah to introduce our other speaker, Robbie Gross.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm a rising senior at Sidwell Friends School. And Robbie Gross is a history teacher and the assistant principal for academic affairs at Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C. He received his PhD in history from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and has written on the social and educational history of the United States. His first book, titled Public versus Private, The Early History of School Choice in America, was published in 2018.
Shall I begin?
So I suggest, Dana, that you make your opening comments. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Audrey, Heidi, and everyone involved with the Gen Z Global Forum. I am delighted to be here with you all as you think about and brainstorm about navigating education and careers in this changing post-pandemic world. So good morning and good evening to all of you. I would like to invite you to focus on 3 connected themes as you begin the new school year, thinking about your education and where that might lead you someday. And as we talk about these 3 themes, I hope you will have a very broad view of education, thinking about what you learn in the classroom and also outside the classroom, because both are very important. So the 3 themes are curiosity, community, and the cycle of give and take. We all know what curiosity is, but I hope that you all will adopt it as a mindset. If you can adopt it as a mindset and just a way that you approach the world, it will greatly help you create a career and a life that you love someday. Curiosity begins with wondering and asking questions and following threads of curiosity. Many students think that everyone else was born with or has found their direction or passion, and that they are the only ones still waiting for lightning to strike, still waiting for the light bulb to go on. But the truth is that the vast majority of people find their interests by exploring and trying things and adding up experiences along the way. At Career Education, we encourage people to be curious, and then, very importantly, we encourage them to act on that curiosity in a variety of ways. It could be seeking out an upperclassman to have a conversation about an internship that person did. It could be watching a documentary about an expert in a field that's intriguing to you. It could be reading an autobiography, changing your major, doing an internship, shadowing someone, or so many other ways to follow your curiosity. You might be thinking, well, next summer I really need to earn some money for school, or when I graduate, I'm going to have to pay the rent. So who has time for curiosity? But of course, those things are real and important and deserve your very good attention. But I hope that you can infuse all parts of your life with more curiosity, both inside and outside the classroom, both inside and outside of a job. Because if you can, it will help you find opportunities in the most unexpected places. So this second theme is community, and Leslie talked about that a bit, because we have been a community here in this group. And your community is where you're going to bring some of that curiosity. And actually, your curiosity will drive you to certain communities. All of you are parts of many communities. Some maybe you were born into, and some you have chosen. It could be your neighborhood, your small town, a religious community. Maybe you've joined a group of singers or soccer players or movie lovers or yoga enthusiasts. Maybe you really feel attached to an identity-based community or a cause-focused community, or your alma mater for undergrad or graduate school someday. Being a part of communities is an enriching part of your life, and you always want to do it in the most authentic way possible. It's never a good idea to fake being part of something. If you find other people with whom you truly share an experience or a common interest, your relationships will naturally be genuine. So be curious within all of your communities and find people who inspire you and those you can inspire. Which leads to my third and final theme, the cycle of give and take. I always like to remember that every single person in a group has something to learn and something to offer. No matter what the group is, no matter what the ages or life experiences of people are, everyone has something to learn and something to offer. There will be times in your life when you have time and energy and expertise that could really help someone. There might be other times in your life when you could use a sounding board, a word of encouragement, or some candid advice, or an introduction to someone. You might have both at the very same time. And that's totally fine. That is the way life works. You might be thinking, well, I'm just a student, so what do I have to offer someone who's 3 or 4 decades older than I am? Well, there are some surprising things you could offer, and I'm happy to help individuals figure that out. But just in general, you might be able to offer a Gen Z perspective on a project that someone's working on that they would otherwise not hear. You might be able to offer information about your hometown if someone's moving there. You might be able to share experiences that you've had at your school if someone has a child that's interested in going to that school. You might be able to offer technology advice or social media advice to somebody who's a lot older than you are. So there are many things that you can do and offer and give even as a student. You might also be wondering, what can I ask someone 3 or 4 or 5 decades older than I am to learn more? Well, I love these questions, and there are many of them, but just to throw out a few, I would recommend asking people, where do you find the joy in your work? What's frustrating to you about your work? What led you to this organization, to this group of people, to this company? What was your path like? And especially now, I think it's great to ask people, how has COVID changed the work you do? Will you be returning to the way you did it before? Have you developed new ways of doing your work? Because we haven't figured all that out. I think a lot of that is still happening right now. So questions are a great way to exercise your curiosity. To summarize, I hope that you'll all remember that learning happens inside and outside of the classroom. I hope you will start with a curious mindset, bring that with you into all of the communities of which you are a part, and know that during your life, you will have opportunities to help and be helped, to assist and be assisted. And that is a wonderful cycle that you'll be a part of. So thank you all again for including me tonight.
Thank you so much, Dana. I just can't resist, jumping in and saying, when you live, a number of decades, you realize that your sense of the narrative does change. And so I think you're right, to keep that sense of curiosity, like what is, this life that I'm leading about, even though I thought it was this, but it's changing to this. I think that is really good advice. So thank you so much. Now, Robbie, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. And just want to echo what Dana said, and thanking you and Minnie, everybody who's on this call, and for inviting me and for this opportunity, and also for all the incredible work you've done with setting up this, I think, really rich internship experience for the students at Sidwell Friends School, where I work. And it's great to see the students here. So I look forward to seeing you in person soon. And I hope you all are having a good summer, and thank you for all the great work you're doing. And I really am grateful for this opportunity. I think, as Sarah mentioned in my introduction, introducing me, that before I became a high school teacher and administrator, I was a historian of education. And so kind of had this kind of written about it, and thinking kind of big picture, long term about trends in especially K-12 education. And then I lived through this pandemic as a school administrator. And I think I probably learned more about education, I feel like, in the last 15 months, 16 months than I did in all my years, doing research and writing. And this is actually my first time kind of being able to reflect on this a little bit. So thank you, Leslie, also for forcing me to reflect on the last kind of extraordinary 16 months in education. So I just want to talk a little bit about sort of what I think this means for schools in the United States, maybe for schools globally, definitely what I'm thinking about in terms of what it means for the school where I work at, Sidwell Friends School. So, I think one thing, and so it's really focused on, the institution, right? Although I do want to say something about the role of students, the role of, many of you on this call, and thinking about this at the end. The first thing I think for me is that in some ways the pandemic really affirmed, in an odd way, what schools have been doing for a long time, especially, right, schools like Sidwell Friends and others that are well resourced, and can really foster strong relationships. One of the things I think we found very early on is learning just does not happen effectively without strong relationships. And I think it's related to Dana, what you talked about in terms of a community. That learning in isolation, even if that means in your bedroom on a Zoom call, it just didn't feel the same for many, many people. And the power of those relationships and fostering those relationships, I think in small settings, are incredibly important. And so I do think that it affirmed that, and that we, in schools need to think about ways to leverage that for the future. right? So in terms of, I think, the importance of those small class sizes, right? And those relationships that, that you can foster between teachers and students, of mentorship programs, right? Where you're connecting students to one another within a school, older and younger students. There's lots of discussions right now in public policy and education policy around tutoring, and the incredible effectiveness of tutoring as a tool to really boost learning for students. And how do we get more young people, including college students, involved in that? And then all the relationship and the relational spaces that are produced outside the classroom, and in extracurriculars and in athletics and other kinds of spaces. That all these different things that American schools do. I really think that in some ways, the pandemic affirmed the importance of all of that. At the same time, I think it has opened up lots of new possibilities that we never really could have thought of before. And I think that's especially true of kind of experiential education. I've always been a big believer in experiential education, in sort of getting students outside the classroom, get them outside of the narrow academic field that they're studying, to see the real world implications of things. And I think that even something like this, Zoom, and people's now comfort with this, just allows all kinds of partnerships and relationships and projects to form that really can get students wonderful experience without the hassle of having to go somewhere all the time and having to bring in experts from around, right? It's just become incredibly easy to in the way that Zoom has just collapsed time and space. In the class I taught last year during the pandemic, just to bring in experts and people involved in nonprofits and on the ground. It used to be very challenging to get them to campus. You had to send them in. It became a whole day affair, and now it's incredibly easy all of a sudden. And so for the students, then, not the same thing, right, as going to those places. We still want that kind of on the ground field trips, field work. But it was wonderful for them to all of a sudden have access to sort of all this wonderful real world stuff in a way that they hadn't before. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that schools, colleges, and universities can really think through. All of a sudden, everybody has this new skill and comfort of Zoom in a way that they didn't 15 months ago. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there that I'm excited about. So that experiential piece, I think, is going to be really, really important. And connected to that, I think, is going to be schools and students as these sort of vehicles for ethical stewardship, which is a really, I think, important part of Sidwell Friends, the school where I work in, but I think schools in general. One of the things I saw immediately happen when the pandemic started was students began to just mobilize in terms of both a deep spirit of voluntarism, like how can we help, sewing masks, creating PPE, just wanting to know, right, what we can do. There were an immense amount of problems that the pandemic exposed in the United States, and in a city like Washington, D.C., exposed the inequalities, I think, in a way that everyone knew, but could really see in a new way in education, in housing, obviously in healthcare, and racial inequality, a whole bunch of different areas. And I think students really were very hungry for opportunities to engage those problems. And I think schools have not done a great job as of now of really meeting students where they are in terms of providing them with opportunities, not only in extracurriculars where that, and in service hours where that stuff has typically lied, but in the academic work of the school, right? How can our classes, how can our academic courses and our curriculum provide opportunities for students to do real world problem solving and real world, and to make the world a better place? I mean, it just seems like if we're not able to provide those avenues, at this point, I'm not sure what else we're doing. So I'm really excited about that as well. And then I think, the final thing is just that the administrators didn't know what they were doing during the pandemic. I mean, no one had ever seen a situation where we're all on Zoom all of a sudden, and so people like me, really, we wouldn't have made it as a school without deep listening from students. I'm sure the students on this call probably think we didn't do nearly as much listening as we should have, which is probably true. But I think that sort of like bringing students in to listen, about what do they think school should look like, the schedule, the workload, the opportunities for, again, that real world problem solving. I just think that's going to be a critical path moving forward. So I would urge all the students, please make your voices, heard in high schools, on college campuses. I really think this is a unique opportunity that has been opened up to rethink a lot of things, and it's not going to go well if the administrators aren't listening to students, because you're the ones on the ground that are experiencing all this. So it's been an incredibly challenging and tragic, obviously, year and a half. But I do think there are some interesting opportunities that I'm sure everybody's looking forward to, especially as we hopefully move out of the immediate pandemic crisis.
Robbie, thank you so much for your comments. And just one comment I have from the internship program. I think the feedback that I've gotten is that a number of people who were our interns were amazed that we asked them to reach out to other people, whether it's, donors or partnerships, to kind of leave their comfort zone and, reach out to new people that they didn't know because they were part of the foundation and we wanted to engage them. And they were like, oh, we were so surprised because we didn't know we had the power to do that. We didn't know that you could reach out to people you didn't know. So I thought, oh, how interesting. That's the technology that we have, that really you can really engage people more than ever before, but you have to somehow have the mindset, to say, I am doing this and I'm reaching out to you, are you engaged? And, because traditionally students, they take the information, they write the paper, they get the grade, and then, they progress. So I thought, how interesting that, a lot of new skill sets that can be enlisted.
Yes, and the other amazing thing is that when students reach out to people, they often think, oh, I'm not going to get a response, and no one's going to want to talk. But then people really want to talk to students. It turns out, and they're really, kind of amazed that a student has reached out and wants to chat with them about whatever it is that they have to offer. So I agree, and again, I think this internship whole program is an example of the kinds of really exciting things that schools ought to be doing. So again.
And of course, Gen Z is just like when I was growing up, we were the boomers. Now it's like a bad word. In my day, it was a good word. Now Gen Zers is a good word, full of promise and technological prowess. So, of course, we want to encourage that and, foster, their future. So, thank you so much. Really appreciate all that. Marisa, what do we have next?
So we will be moving on to our career discussion portion. And like I mentioned earlier, this will be then followed by an opportunity to speak more directly with our guest speakers. But I'm going to pass it off to, we'll be introducing, I believe, Desmond Wheatley first. Whoever would like to do the level introduction.
Yeah, I'll introduce.
And I will once again try to share my screen.
Yeah, so I'll give a brief introduction of myself first. So I'm Yana Kim, and I'm a student at Wellesley College. And the reason that I was interested in the foundation is the mission of the foundation, which is connecting women in China and the US and helping to empower women in both countries. And through the internship program, I learned a lot and enjoy working with a great team. And since everything was very new to me, it really challenged me a lot as I had to reach out to people whom I've never met or talked to, which really brings me out of the comfort zone. So it was a great opportunity for me to learn about how it is like to work in a nonprofit organization and networking with people. And now I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Desmond Wheatley. So Desmond Wheatley is a thought leader in the fields of clean energy and new technologies. He joined Beam Global as a consultant in 2010 when it was Envision Solar, and has served as a company CEO since 2011 and as chairman of the board since 2016. He has 2 decades of senior international management experience in technology systems and integration, energy management, communications, and renewable energy. He was a founding partner in the international consulting practice Christian Hill. Prior to Christian Hill, Wheatley was CEO of iAccess, a Dubai-based alternative energy and technology systems integration company. Now I'll pass it to Heidi. We'll introduce another guest speaker.
Oh, yeah, great. So before that, I will first make a brief introduction of myself. So good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Heidi. I am a rising sophomore at Wellesley College. And the reason why I joined in the CUSWF this summer is because I'm very attracted by the missions of the foundation, as that is to empower both women in the China and United States through different perspectives, such as education, arts, and economics. And I think what I learned from this summer is a lot, such as on learning about the economic and cultural impact of COVID-19 on different people through our readings and videos. And also I got a chance and courage, as Leslie said, to reach out to many different professionals in their own fields, such as artists, educators, and entrepreneurs, and listen to their perspectives both in China and United States. And now I would like to introduce our guest speakers for today. And her name is Ying Liu. So she is currently the Asia Pacific Regional Manager for escrow services and business development at JP Morgan Corporate Investment Bank, where she is engaged in mergers and acquisitions and private equity investments. She also gained experience as an investment banker at UBS New York prior to that role. So Ying graduated with double majors in biochemistry and economics from Wellesley College, and she later received her MBA from Harvard Business School. So great, it's our pleasure to have you today. And wondering for the general speech, can you give a brief introduction of your career and higher education journey after you graduate from Wellesley College? And what do you think may be some of the influence of the workforce due to the COVID-19? And I will pass on to Ms. Liu.
Sure. So thank you for inviting me to this forum through Heidi. And I first, of course, heard about it only about a couple of weeks ago, but having heard from our co-founder and also the previous speakers, I think this is a great forum. And again, I'm delighted to be invited and delighted to be here today. So very quickly, I'll share my experience after Wellesley. I basically started my professional career at JP Morgan as a summer intern in investment banking. So that was many years ago. And so my career journey has been pretty simple, basically investment banking most of the time. And then in the last few years, in this escrow services, which is actually facilitating and assisting some of the M&A transaction structures from deal protection standpoint. Several things I guess come up to my mind, but I guess for this this session, I just highlight 2 things from sort of the theme of new paradigms, right? One thing I think in this in today's day and age, one thing is about the interdisciplinary aspect of our learnings and also what's happening in the professional world, right? A good example would be fintech, right? One would think that I work in finance, but then these days there are a lot of fintech companies, which basically is a combination of financial services and technology. Okay? So these firms are trying to bring more efficiencies to various aspects of the financial services world. So that's sort of something that's different from I would think many generations ago, where if you're in finance, you're actually pigeonholed in your finance role. You can be pretty much oblivious to the other industries, but now it's not the same anymore. And the other change I would think that has happened will be flexibility, right? That has happened many years ago, especially in the tech industry, where people have more flexible hours. And now with the COVID situation, we have the work from home kind of arrangement, and more people actually, especially I think the young generations, they actually have there are more people who are self-employed, and that to me, I think that it requires more discipline, right? So you really have to be more self-driven. You really have to actually be passionate and interested in what you do, because again, a lot of it is you're driving your own agenda, and be flexible, but at the same time you're actually trying to also make a positive impact, right, from your career. So these changes, I think, from linking it to education, right? A good education is actually preparing, whether it's Gen Zs or other generations, are really preparing everyone to adapt to different types of environment. So, for example, right, when I talk about the interdisciplinary aspect of it, a liberal arts education to me is actually very helpful, because it actually teaches everyone how to learn, right? You're actually receiving your education, but then you're also learning, how to keep up with your, curiosity, to, I guess, Dana's point earlier, right? How to keep up with your curiosity and keep challenging yourself, and how to actually embrace changes. So that aspect, I think, is from, the education part of it. In talking about, my second point, the flexibility and, be disciplined. That's also from education as well, right? We all know that, at Wellesley, it's actually a very sort of demanding academic schedule, as well as, everyone's participating in the community, whether it's, your a sports team member, you're trying to actually, represent the college, participating in some of the sports competitions, or if you're actually, part of your community and taking up leadership roles on campus or off campus, right? So anyway, my point is that the education, the college education is also the time when you actually, show your commitment and stick to your commitment, and that kind of self-driven, discipline will actually be helpful for your long-term career as well. So these are, again, the two changes that I'll highlight. But ultimately, if you ask me, right, there are certain things that will never change, which will be your work ethics, your integrity, and basically, this in the soft skills as well as the technical skills in the professional world, right? These things will never change. You can actually bring these skill sets and also your work ethics to anywhere, whatever you do, whether it's in finance, it's in technology, or any creative career paths that you undertake. So ultimately, I think a good education it is vital to both sort of the career development down the road, as well as basically being in a person with integrity. So I would actually, I guess, for the students, for the younger generation on this forum, I would actually, just encourage you guys to enjoy the time at school, in your university, college life, and, again, be open to different types of, academic subjects. You never know, when down the road you might actually need, sort of the knowledge of a different subject that you may not actually at the time sort of appreciate as much, but you will actually down the road actually find, the interdisciplinary aspect of all these subjects that you learn at school will be very helpful. So I just actually end here. Thank you again.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing. It's very inspiring. And I really agree with what you have said, the close connections between education and also career after that. We'll have more questions for you and we'll discuss that in the breakout session. And now I will pass to Yana.
So I'll pass it to my guest speaker, Desmond Wheatley. Mr. Wheatley, would you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, no, I will, but I'll keep it very brief because I think it's probably the least interesting thing that we can talk about here this evening. First of all, I just want to thank you and Leslie and Marissa and to the other members of CUSWF for everything that you're doing. It's a great honor for me to be speaking to such a prestigious group and of very well-educated women. And this forum and what you're doing is actually near and dear to two things which I find very important. By the way, I do have some prepared comments for you, and I'll go through those in a minute. But just before I get there, I just want to say that a couple of things really bother me. One of them is that human beings are far better at and far more inclined to build walls than they are to build bridges. And there's quite a lot of effort at the moment going on both sides of the Pacific to build walls between China and the United States. And so I would say that anyone who's involved in building bridges instead of walls between these two great nations is doing a service not just to the citizens of those nations, but in fact to the whole world, to the whole global population. And CUSWF, I mean, it's basic part of your charter is to do that. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I think it's very important work. And I thank you for it. And I'm happy to do anything I can to support it. At the same time, the other part of your mission is also near and dear to my heart. As a global citizen and as a man and as a businessman, I abhor waste and I abhor underutilization of resources. And I like history. History is a great way of telling what's going to happen in the future. Looking back is a great way of telling what is going to happen as we look forward. And the simple fact of the matter is 51% of the global population has been essentially prevented from making important contributions in all but a few cases throughout human history. 51%, which is the percentage of population which is female. In a male-run world, most of the decisions and breakthroughs and all the other things that have happened have been made by men. And just purely statistically, I have to say to myself, how many Einsteins, how many Edisons, how many Da Vincis have we never heard from because of the balance of XY chromosomes, because they were women? What a terrible waste. How much further forward could humanity be if women had been able to contribute at the same level as men have been able to contribute throughout human history? It's mind-boggling. I don't know where we might be, what diseases we could have cured, how much further into the cosmos we would have traveled, what wars might have been prevented. It's mind-boggling. 51% of the population. You couldn't run a business like that. Nobody in their right mind would have 51% of their potentially useful people doing nothing and deliberately hold them back. So again, the two mandates of CUSWF, I believe, bridge building between China and the United States, and then supporting and promoting women's engagement in business and academia and all these other things. It's hard to pick two things which are more important, except the one I'm engaged in, which is clean energy, but more of that in a second. So again, thank you very much for having me. It's a real honor to speak to you, and I'm humbled by it. So now I'm just going to go through some prepared comments, something I generally shoot from the hip, but because you're such an esteemed group, I actually took some time and put some notes together here, and I'll go through those. And then afterwards, I think we're going to have an opportunity to have a chat in the breakout session, and I'll certainly look forward to that. And the comments that I'm going to make are more philosophical in nature. We can get into specifics about career and all those sorts of things later, but I just want to set the stage and let you know how I think, so that you can avoid the breakout session if you find yourself in vehement disagreement with me. In business, it's generally true that as the production of the business increases, so do the costs associated with that increased production. The increase is not always rational. There are great opportunities for leverage. Take software, for example. Once produced software sales deliver fantastic leverage because the incremental costs are very low as volumes increase. Traditional businesses like manufacturing have a more direct link between volume and costs. And even service businesses have incremental increases in costs as their sales volumes grow. So it's generally true that as sales volumes increase, whatever the product, so do costs. Now, in over 30 years of running businesses, I've only ever discovered one resource which is infinite in its capacity, yet fixed in cost, no matter how much it produces. And actually, all of you are using that resource right now. It's what occurs between the ears of the humans engaged in the business. There's essentially no limit to the capacity of the human brain to invent, to innovate, and to improve. What has not been invented today will be invented in the future. It's only a matter of time and determination. So I have to congratulate each of you for concentrating your efforts, chiefly through education, to exercising what will always be the most valuable resource at your disposal, your brain. And then I'm going to ask you a question. Why are you doing so? Why are you getting an education? Why bother? Are you doing it entirely for personal gain? Or for your families, perhaps? Or are you doing it for the greater good? Maybe all three would be the best answer, especially if honestly given. Where careers are concerned, you can ask the same question. Why are you going to do it? One or more of the same three answers will be the truth. Historically, in the main, the first answer would be most true in developed Western societies. Personal gain has always been the unashamed reason behind work. Not always financial gain, but personal gain of some sort. In less industrialized developed societies, the second answer, the good of the family, is often the driving force behind work, whether or not the worker themselves would have willingly made that choice. In only a very few instances has the greater good been the real driver behind work. Now, what I'm going to suggest to you today, as each of you is considering how best to use your most valuable resource, your brain, and the education that exercises it, is that this old way of thinking must be totally reversed. In the future, business models and the careers which support them will have to focus first on the greater good and only then on individual gain. The good news is that these goals do not have to conflict. We don't have to destroy, to extract, to conquer nature, or to waste in order to create. In fact, we can deliver prosperity, comfort, security, and even abundance if we simply use our resources more intelligently. Those who embrace this new way of thinking will make vast sums of money, and what is more important for me at least, be able to look at themselves in the mirror without feeling shame. Those who cling to the old ways of doing things will find their skills to be increasingly out of date and without worth, either monetarily or in esteem. I was born holding 4 aces: white, male, healthy, and not poor. I had no part in receiving those aces. It was pure accident of birth. What I do with those aces, on the other hand, is entirely within my power to control. You're all privileged as well, even if you feel that you weren't quite as lucky as I was at birth. What will you do with that privilege? So, as you consider a career or a path forward, seek the things that matter, the really big things. There's nothing wrong with making money, but influence is worth much more. Money does not make the path to the graveyard a happy one, but a sense of having left the world a better place than you found it might. And while you're at university, avoid becoming too vocationally focused. If you focus on any one thing, let it be becoming more interesting at dinner parties. If you do that, all other things will fall into place. No one likes a boring lawyer, a boring accountant, or a boring architect. But the interesting members of those professions can make delightful company at any dinner table, particularly if they're engaged in enlightened activities, as you all should be. So use your time at university to open your mind as wide as it can possibly go, rather than narrowing it to a specific task. You'll never regret it. Seek out ways to make everyone, everything, and everywhere a little better than you found them. If all 8 billion of us did this, it would take no more than a day to create salvation for all the world's problems. Such is the effect of compounding. In January of 1961, John Fitzgerald Kennedy asked Americans not to seek what they could get from the United States, but rather to discover what they could give. In July of 2021, we should all be guided by the same principles, except that now it's not this country that we need to serve, but the only planet we know of which can offer us sanctuary. The generation that lived through the Second World War is often described as the greatest generation, but in fact, yours should be the greatest generation. Your generation can and must, like the hero in a science fiction movie, save the world. Don't leave it to others. Be the future that you want to see. That's it for my comments, Leslie. I'll hand it back to you.
So Desmond, thank you so much. We traveled to China together. I'm sure we will try to go back there. You have embarked on a new paradigm, which is electric charging stations through solar energy. So you are a model. I really look forward to your engagement in the Gen Z Global Forum. And thank you so much for being here today. Marisa, now where are we going?
So again, thank you so much to our speakers. You guys are all amazing and I'm feeling really inspired. So now we're going to go into our first set of breakout rooms. So we're going to have the education guest speakers, so Dana Keep and Robbie Gross in one room, and then we'll have our 2 career guest speakers, Yinglu and Desmond Wheatley, in another. I'm going to try it so that you guys can choose which room you want to be in. If something goes awry, you end up in a room that you want to like switch rooms or something at some point, I will be in the main room, so I can send you, you can pop back into the main room and I will send you back to whichever breakout room you want to be in. So let's see if I can get these breakout rooms going. Alrighty, do we have, I think everyone is back now. Like I was saying, I hope everyone enjoyed those breakout rooms. And we will be moving on to the second portion of the forum, which will be highlighting the arts exhibition and the amazing work done by some of the artists among us on this call. And I'm going to pass it on to Angelina, or not Angelina, yeah, Angelina.
Hi everyone, I'm Angelina. I'll be talking a little bit about myself and introducing Marianne. I major in English and Media Arts and Sciences at Wellesley College. So for me, this CUSWF internship was all about connecting people and ideas and giving us opportunities and support to create relationships and creative collaborations that last beyond this summer. So I learned a lot about forging creative connections as part of my experience in the arts workshop. With the pandemic having gone on for over a year now, I think a lot of us can relate to experiencing a creative drain or losing certain in-person art spaces that we relied on before for a certain inspiration. The director of our arts workshop and our next speaker, Marianne, has shown me how easy it can be to still experience creative flow and to recapture that sense of inspiration. She gave us these very simple but really meaningful prompts that you can incorporate in your life as well. I'll be introducing Marianne now. Marianne Bernstein is a longtime artist, educator, and curator. A graduate of Sitwell Friends class in 1974, she majored in English and Film Studies at Vassar College and University of Michigan in 1978. For over a decade, she taught photography at a creative arts workshop in New Haven, Connecticut. In the 1990s, while head of visual arts at Art Space Gallery in New Haven, she independently founded Untitled Space, The Lot, and co-founded Citywide Open Studios, which incorporated alternative empty spaces as a call to widen the idea of art practice outside of the traditional studio setting. These projects won her Best Arts Visionary and Opening Minds, Open Doors awards in 2000, as well as an Andy Warhol grant for Art Space for her exhibition Foreign Bodies. Since 2001, she has collaborated with artists, museums, and galleries in Philadelphia, New Haven, and Chicago, and internationally in Iceland, Sicily, and Taiwan. I'll give the floor now to Marianne.
Thank you, Angelina. Hello, everyone. And I just want to extend a huge thank you to Leslie for getting me involved in this incredible foundation. You know, I've done a lot of things, and I have to say during the pandemic and until recently, I was starting to rethink everything, and even whether I wanted to call myself a curator, whether I was an artist, just sort of, I don't know, feeling a little lost, but in a good way. And finding this foundation, I think sort of, and you guys, has actually given me hope for the future and encouraged me to kind of rethink what my direction moving forward, you know, into an unknown future. But, you know, initially I was missing personal connections. When I've taught, it's always been with everyone. I kind of wondered what an arts workshop might be virtually, wondering whether that's even possible. And I have to say, the 6 or 7 of you that were part of this workshop just really encouraged and inspired me to understand that you can make profound connections even in a short time. I mean, there were 4 prompts. I've known you guys, I hardly know you for a short time, but somehow after these prompts and the way that you rose to the occasion in a really brave way, and you'll see when you look at their work, they were freaking brave. And, you know, I think that, you know, Desmond, I was really inspired by your words and your passion, and everyone else too. But I think a key word that I often think of is bravery. Like, don't be afraid to jump in and follow your passion, and be careful about being your own self-critic, because if I were to say anything to my earlier self, it would be, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. Everybody makes mistakes. Follow the thread, put one foot in front of the other, and just figure out what you love and who you might love to do it with. Because I read this quote a while ago. It said, you must first be who you truly are in order to get what you really want. And that really stuck with me, and it's obviously a lifelong practice to find out who you are. But if you can dive deep and be brave and be curious and figure out who you are in the most authentic way, life is really magical in this way. You will eventually find your way. It's not the plan you think, it's really in you. And so that's the purpose of this art workshop that we did. And you know, creativity is one thing, art is another. everyone, I think, has the ability to be creative in whatever field you are in. My husband is a scientist. He's incredibly creative in science. You know, art is something different. That's a craft that, you know, creativity encourages, that if you work on for a long time, and if it's something that you feel really passionate about, then you can, you know, a lot of people can make really amazing art or learn how to draw. But when people say, oh, I'm not an artist, I'm not creative, that's not true. You don't have to be creative. You don't have to be creative. You don't have to be, well, whatever. you get my point. That you can be creative without being an artist, I think, is what I'm trying to get at. So one thing I've noticed and read about your generation is that, you know, the social scientists in 2018 were thinking about you guys as superstars, like cultural nomads, like sort of the younger, you know, siblings of older generations, and you sort of learned from our mistakes and all that. And you were going in that trajectory until COVID hit. And then boom, you know, everything stopped, and, you know, and for all of us, life changed. But I think that from what I've gathered, a little I've known you, and also looking at your artworks you produced, that there's a certain anxiety seeping into your Gen Z generation. It's anxiety about, and for good reason, anxiety about the future. I mean, you've experienced it. It's not just an idea. You've actually experienced people getting sick, being in the same place, being with your parents, not being in school, not being with your friends. So I do feel like I've been inspired by this workshop to help relieve some of that anxiety, because I think that's what creativity does. It helps you dive deep into yourself, and it helps, to a certain extent, relieve anxiety, for not just for yourself, but for others. So I gave the group a series of prompts. I won't go into the prompts. They responded right away. There were 3 interns from Sidwell, 3 from Wellesley. You'll be seeing their work shortly. And basically the prompts invited them to look inside themselves, and then also to look out, to dream of possibility, and to find new expressions for their emotions. You know, I think sometimes we think of ourselves as either happy or sad, you know, one extreme or the other. But the truth of the matter is, when you think about what makes you cry, it's all kinds of things. There's pain, there's sorrow, there's joy, beauty, recognition, understanding. And sometimes our attempts to ward off sadness actually ward off depth instead. So I think that you'll see in these artworks, and they're certainly in the responses of this wonderful group, that they were not afraid to skirt these all kinds of emotions and to, you know, dive deep. So the question really I was posing is, do you want to dive deep, or do you want to stay in the shallows? And they dove deep. So I had more that I wanted to say, but I think we're running over time. So I just want to, I'm going to have a few quotes from the work that you'll see. They created work, in the final project was a collage, and they also wrote a poem to go with their collage. And so I'm going to quote from some of the words from the collages and the poems, and just touching upon each person. So I wrote, Vivian's memories of spring, cherry at night waiting to bloom, suddenly overflows into red and mellow tea. Macy yearns to sparkle like a waterfall, but is green like a frog leaping on lily pads. Angelina dives underwater in darkness, jellyfish slipping over her skin. Heidi runs with wolves who form a pack and transform into dandelions. Sarah's calm white eyes scan cliff sides. Marisa travels backwards past a blue moon and red sun. Sarah draws a framed photo taken by a dead grandfather. So in our imaginations, we can fly through time and space and remember that we're all interconnected on this tiny planet to all living beings. So we'll start with each person showing the work that they did, and reading, hopefully if they want to, reading what they wrote.
All right, I'll share screen one more time.
Okay, hi everybody. I am Vivian, and this is my collage work. And the according prompt for this artwork is a list of questions of what we like or want to become. And after having those answers in mind, we then put all those answers together into an artwork and wrote a poem incorporating those answers. And here is my poem. 6 to 7, spring comes early, cherry at night, blooms in dream, afternoon Beijing, tea bag in brown bottle, red and mellow, overflows to the 7th year. Traveling the world and step back, I still want to be a kitten lying under the sun, hearing the early morning call. So all of my experiences or memories about things mentioned in the answers are kind of tied back to my elementary school life, especially during the pandemic. I think I'm pretty sure that a lot of people like us will begin to reflect and and then have memory about the past and start to like recollect all of those like memorable things in the past, and then trying to connect them all together, since we all really wanted to go back to the normal times. So for me in this collage, there are a lot of also personal emotions accompanied as well, and also some like innocent thoughts and ideas too about my elementary school life. So I tried to make this collage as colorful as possible to retrieve that amazing period time of my life. And that's my collage. Thank you.
Okay, so for I will first read a poem. It is called the Alternate Requiem, and it starts with, it is said that on the last midnight of autumn, when the moon is high and the trees bow, 4 wolves shall form a pack to spread dandelion seeds on their way to France. Le pays de la fleur, city of light, of darkness, of affluence, of poverty, of hope, of desperation. They'll be free from pain, their mighty claws dipping on clouds, water, rooftops, grasslands, their breaths, warm, gentle breeze, their howl echoing from mountain tops to mountain ends. They run like strokes of lightning until their bodies slowly begin to fall apart, transform into dandelions, drifting high and far into the uplifting horizon. So at first, when I'm writing this poem, I try to fit every answer I write for a prompt into the poem. But then I realized I was unconsciously inspired by Norse mythology, in that there is a personification of wolves and kind of showing its epic journey throughout by beginning to the end. And even though the name is called Requiem, I don't want it to be entirely melancholic and like a poetry of mourning, but I really wanted to be kind of showing a cycle of growth, birth, death, and then reincarnation. So I think that is kind of like a journey that everyone will go through in their life, and also what we have been experiencing during the COVID-19, where everything is fading away, and then we are kind of recollecting and then growing from like the ashes. And then I write the poetry in purple because that is one of my favorite color, and that is kind of resonating with the collage on the left. So one detail about the collage is on the red and blue ribbons on the left, so on the purple sock. So I really want to show how purple is kind of like a combination of red, which I think is a very extroverted color, and then blue, which is very cool and chill. So I think that is kind of showing my personality of a combination of extroverted and introverted. And then for the letters on the bottom left, so you can read it as love, which I think is a basic emotion for everything creative. And then you can also read it as Louvre. So that is one of my favorite art museums, and kind of also showing my love for the country. So I think it is very interesting doing this prompt because it is kind of like a journey of self-reflection. And I really got more time to think what I truly am and what I truly want. And as Marianne said, and I think to realize it in a comprehensive form of both written way, like the poetry, and also visual way, like the collage, is very interesting. And I will definitely continue that creative approach in the future, because I think it really helped me to relieve some of the stress I have, and also to view the surroundings around me in a different angle. And now I will pass to Angelina.
Yeah, if you can switch to the next slide. Right, I'll keep my presentation short and sweet. My poem and collage is kind of a love poem to multilingualism and diaspora and identities in between. And I'll read it now. I found you undercover, jellyfish slipping over your skin, translucent color past my fingers' skin. Underwater, we're both too dark to be seen. Time away from home has undone us in secret. I'm sorry, I didn't dare call out in my mother's voice. I wish I could bend binaries like your watery limbs, but I'm trying so hard to remember where my bones lie. So I say, they cannot decipher us the deeper we dive. And before we surface for our next breath, let me kiss you under your skin, read you in your tongue, instead of the one we were both taught. That's it, thank you. And I'll pass it on to the next person.
So my poem was pretty short. I'll read it. Eyes wide, green eyes, English countryside, wild flowers, morning dew, cliffsides calm. And I was just inspired by the prompt a lot, and it sort of drew me in a direction. Like I noticed when I was cutting out just scraps from magazines that like all of them were green, and I didn't plan on that at first, and so that sort of just happened, which became kind of a theme too throughout my poem. And yeah, this was just inspired by like places I've traveled before and liked, and the music I'm listening to, and just, yeah, but it was short and simple.
So I actually created a collage. We're running over time, so I'm not going to read this poem right now, but I will give you sort of a little bit of a background on it. So for this collage, I was sort of inspired by, so I am Chinese American, but I'm also adopted. So it was really inspired by sort of that collision of two cultures and my upbringing in a very like an Italian American household, but then as I got older, sort of coming more to terms with my Chinese American background and just being from China and what it all meant for me. And so that's sort of what happened with this collage. I was going through some pictures, and then I ended up printing out some of my own, and again came up with this sort of collision of cultures and experiences.
Marisa, do read it to us. We really would like to hear from you.
Okay. A blue moon, a red sun, a Friday night, a Saturday morn, a mother, a father, about to embark. Together they came, together they left, to bring a young girl from China to their home. Countries so different, yet the cultures collide. She will love home, but mourn what might have been. She will wonder what if, and plan what she can. And one day, not in the place. And we will be moving to the objects of affection portion of
Okay, hi, I'm Alden. So instead of the collage and the poem, I decided to present a different prompt. I feel like this one spoke to me a little bit more just because I was able to focus on a specific moment. And basically this was to create an object of affection, and it was supposed to be a sketch. So I chose to draw this framed photo of Southport, Maine. And just a little fun fact, I'm actually there right now. So I've been able to kind of enjoy that. But this really stuck out to me because it reminds me of my grandfather, and he actually took this photo. And I've also like just admired kind of his passion for photography, which I've kind of taken account of at Sidwell, and I've been able to enjoy photography as well. And I also just think that like just focusing more on like the smallest moments, not even just like the journey of, I guess, of like the different parts of my identity or something. I feel like this really just like spoke out to me, and I was able to kind of just zone in and think about that moment while I was creating this.
And Maisie?
Yeah, I'm just gonna talk a little bit shortly about my poem. I just kind of wanted to create something simple and organic, so I chose a lot of kind of items from nature because it's a self-portrait assignment, but I wanted to choose what was kind of like most important to me about myself, which is being a kind of part of the natural world. And I wanted to create a poem of kind of self-acceptance, and that kind of points out the fact that like you don't really spend a lot of time comparing waterfalls to flowers to frogs or anything and judging which one is better than another, and you kind of have to apply the same kind of health, and we're all kind of a piece. That's okay. Yeah, so I'll just read it. I want to sparkle like a waterfall in the summer sunlight, like glassware on the kitchen table. I want to be pink like roses arranged in a jar, but I am green. Oh, it stopped sharing, so I can't see. But it says like a frog leaping on lily pads. Yeah.
My apologies. My Wi-Fi is not doing too great right now.
Oh, no problem. Okay, I'll just finish it. Like a frog leaping on lily pads, green like the leaves on the trees, like springtime and new beginnings.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Moving on to our second breakout session where you get to hear more from the artists, and we will have 2 breakout rooms, and you can bear with me while I try to get us in the right rooms one more time. Alrighty, do we have everyone back? I believe so. And I'm going to just want to say thank you for everybody for joining us. I certainly enjoyed myself, and I'm going to pass it off to Leslie and whoever else will be in our closing statements.
So thank you, Marissa, for being my co-host. Thank you to everyone. We went a little bit over, but I think it was all in good fun. We will be continuing in the fall. We invite all of you to continue with us in various different capacities. But for tonight, I think we've come together, we've really shared important thoughts, and I want to thank you all for being together. Marianne, do you have any final closing thoughts?
No, this was great. I really enjoyed all of it. So thank you all. It's really great.